No? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for joining this webinar on registries and studies. The webinar is part of our therapy development series, and if you haven't had a chance to attend the previous ones in the series, all the recordings can be found on our website, so please check it out. Last one we had was on community-driven innovation, so I would definitely recommend watching that if you get a chance. Also, please put the questions in the chat, and we ask that you put your organization next to your name. And without further ado, today we have Deb Thompson, who is the Vice President of at Luna of Strategy and Operations. She's also an expert on registry and studies, and we're very thrilled to have her here to share her knowledge and expertise with us today. So, Deb, it's all yours.
Thank you, Vilma, and thanks for the opportunity to meet everybody and give you a little bit more background on Luna. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just to make sure that that is working. All right, you guys able to see that all right?
Yes, thanks.
Great. So what I wanted to do today was give you a little bit of a background on Luna and a little bit of a background on the platform, and then we'll dive into the actual demo of some parts of the platform. It'll have to be pretty high level just in the interest of time, and I want to make sure that you all have plenty of opportunity to ask any questions that you have. So feel free to interrupt me. It's going to be a little bit hard for me to see if you've raised your hand on the video, so I think you can either put the questions in the chat and I'll try to keep an eye on that, or Vilma or Nasheen, you can interrupt me if you see some questions come up so that we kind of answer the questions in context. So Luna's background, just to give you a little bit more information about that. Our mission is really to drive better outcomes in health and wellness. And we believe that one way that we can do that is by helping to bridge communities with industry and other researchers. And the partnership that we have with Genetic Alliance has really helped us enable that. It's helped us to understand more of what communities need and how that we can support them. So we kind of believe that communities are people's source of truth. That's where people are going to really help understand their condition, get the support that they need, heal together when possible. And most importantly, as you probably heard about if you joined the community-driven innovation webinar previously, to really understand what people's priorities are. And we believe that communities can be very powerful when they understand that, because they can then take those priorities to the researchers to help drive the right research. And what we've seen on the industry side and with other types of researchers besides just industry is that they lack that real understanding of what people's priorities are, of what the condition really is, and what problems they really need to solve for. And so they need access to that type of information that's both gathered inside and outside of the clinical setting. They need to get away from those kind of fragmented data sets that are more historical. They need to have that longitudinal access to people to understand their journey as they go through managing their conditions. And so we actually believe that the communities are where researchers can understand what I like to call the real world lived experiences, because some of what's gathered today as real world data really isn't real world data. But going to the people and understanding what they need is the source of truth. And so, as you guys are probably well aware, because it's in the news almost every day, there's a lot going on around data privacy. And industry, probably faster than others, has really understood that the world is changing in terms of how we need to manage data. And I wanted to just give a quick, 20-second overview of kind of Luna's ethos on data privacy. So like I said, as you've seen, because it comes up every day, is that data privacy and then the individuals having control of their data. And by control, it really means understanding how their data is being used and being able to stop it from being used for something that they don't agree with. And that's becoming the global norm. And that started a few years ago with the European Union's GDPR regulations, but it's expanded quite extensively. And we've put a couple of the different countries over on the right there that have adopted similar privacy regulations. And that's certainly some of them, but by far not all of them. It's becoming quite pervasive. And although GDPR remains probably one of the more stringent ones, what's being adopted by other countries is very, very similar. And it's not just outside of the United States. Many states inside of the United States have either already adopted similar privacy laws, like in California, which is where we're located, CCPA and recently CCPR. And you can see there from that little chart on the bottom right, there's over a dozen states in the US that have already signed or introduced similar types of privacy regulations. So it's something that we all need to think about, whether we're working with a community that's just inside the United States or that's global. And Luna has really taken this idea and this concept to heart. We believe that an individual being in control of their data is actually quite empowering. We don't see it as a hurdle that needs to be overcome. We see it as something to be like a brand of honor, because it's something that each individual needs to have the trust to join the research that's going on, because they know what's going on with their data. And we're very hopeful that this helps bring more inclusion with currently underrepresented groups, because they're able to have a little bit more trust in how their data is being used and what it's being used for. And so the Luna platform itself was built from the ground up with this concept. So the very foundation and architecture was built privacy by design to comply with GDPR and other privacy regulations. And not only the foundation, but also how we operationalize all the processes within the platform were already built to that level. So we don't have to worry about retrofitting or figuring out if we can even retrofit something, because we built it that way from the start. And we recently actually went through a DPIA, which is a data protection impact assessment, where an external party came in and assessed how well we were doing this to ensure that we do comply with GDPR and so forth. And that was a publication early last year, almost a year ago, that we completed. So again, it's just, we believe this, we take this burden off of a lot of our partners, because we handle so much of the privacy regulations that are out there, so that you and researchers don't have to worry about that. And so when we think about how we become that bridge to really help industry and communities come together to drive more of the right kind of research and drive it faster, what does the platform enable? Excuse me. And so on the community side, and with the patients and the individuals themselves, we provide a space and a platform where communities can come together worldwide. So we're a worldwide platform. You can start to understand the priorities of your community in depth. You can start to kind of characterize their lived experiences so that you have the best understanding of how their journey takes them. And then what does that do for the researchers? So on the research side, they're trying to evolve to think more in a people-centered fashion, but they still are very focused on the cohort that they're interested in. So they're wanting to understand that phenotype of what's going on with that group of patients. And you can do a lot of that work for them to already understand what that looks like. You can help drive them to the right priorities, but they still have access to the ability to collect longitudinal data over time. They can do it all in a privacy preserving way, so that not only is the anonymity of the patients kept, but there's no bias introduced into their clinical studies either. And they can continue to do that over time, whether it's understanding what's going on before the clinical study, during the clinical study, or what happens after the clinical study. And so some of the tools that we provide on the platform we'll go through today, but just to start out with that, thinking about the actual data that's being collected. So we've already talked about the community-driven innovation. And again, if you haven't seen that webinar that Ian Terry from Luna and Caitlin Esposito from the Bobby Jones community did, I think it was a few weeks ago, I really recommend it, because one of, again, the kind of core ethos that Luna has is understanding in an unbiased manner from the people what their priorities are. And again, that's so important, so that the people that are doing the research are doing the right research and focused on the right endpoints. And so not only do we provide that community-driven innovation service on the platform. But we also have the Survey Builder tool, which allows you to create bespoke surveys. You also have access to a library of validated instruments so that you can collect those patient-reported outcomes. You can also collect clinician-reported outcomes if you want to design the surveys that way. We also have other ways of collecting additional types of data. So for example, on the genomic data side, we enable the upload of genotyping files from any of the key direct-to-consumer vendors out there, like 23andMe or Ancestry DNA, excuse me, and a few others. We also create direct-to-lab integration. So for example, to Invitae, a member can initiate a transfer of their genetic testing data and reports from Invitae into their member account. And then health records. So we integrate with over 90% of the patient portals and EMR systems in the United States. We collect the data in the HL7 FHIR standard format, which is the data interoperability structure that the US has adopted. So that pulls over the information from those patient accounts in a passive way. The member just has to make the connection once, and then we collect the retrospective information from their health accounts and any prospective information as they go to their doctors over time in the future. So of course, that's only for the United States. If a person in the United States doesn't have access to a patient portal, for example, some historical records that they had saved from a time before portals were available, or for those people that are outside of the United States, most countries don't have a data interoperability standard. Some patients in various countries have limited access to their records, but for whatever access they do have, we also provide the ability for people to upload their health records into their accounts too. So going into a little bit more detail on the platform, we've talked about the members, we've talked a little bit about the researchers, but there's actually also a third piece to the platform, and I'm going to go through each of those pieces, and we'll have time to look at a few of these today live in the environment. So first, the first part of the platform is the member web, or the member side of the platform. This is where the individuals themselves come onto the platform. They're usually coming in through a community, either through a community for a specific study or for a specific registry. Sometimes there are folks that find Luna just kind of off the street, as we call it. So they come into the platform. Once they're on the platform, if they came in through a specific community, they have access to that community's page. They have access to any studies that that community is recruiting for. They can receive messages from the community, and we'll talk about that feature today. They can share their data through the studies that they choose to enroll in. And we have a few different types of accounts that we support on the platform. So the primary type of account is a standard account for an adult who's able to create and manage their own account to join studies on their own behalf. We also support minor accounts. So a parent or guardian can create their parent or guardian account, and then they can create a profile for their minor or minors. So when they log in, they're logging into their parent account. They select the profile of their child. When they're in their child's account, they're acting on behalf of their child. So whenever they're in their child's account, they're completing surveys on behalf of their child. They're completing health record patient portal connections on behalf of their child, and so forth. We also have ward accounts. A ward is what we define as an adult who is unable to create or manage their own account, often because of a health condition or other reason. In those situations, there's a caregiver account similar to the parent or guardian for a minor. The caregiver creates their own caregiver account and then sets up a profile for their ward. When they log in, they choose either their own account or the ward's account. They go into the ward's account to act on behalf and share data for their ward. We also enable setting up accounts for deceased minors and wards. So again, in that situation, a caregiver would come in and create the account. And when they're in the profile for the deceased individual, they can share historical information about that person. So that's the member side. That's how they see what the community admins are trying to present to them, what they see researchers are trying to present to them, and how they interact with those aspects of the platform. The kind of central hub of the platform is the admin web. There are community admins and there are researcher admins. They all have access to a similar set of tools. So if you're a community admin, some of the main things you're going to be focused on is setting up how your community presents itself to your members. So your logos and brand colors, your description of your community, whatever studies you want to present to your members, that's all set up from your admin account. The community admins may also be researchers, but if you're acting as a researcher, whether you're a community admin or just a study and research admin, you also have access to the tools in the platform, like our study designer, where you design studies to deploy to your members, to the survey builder, where you can create custom surveys and access the instrument library, to our recontact agent, which is how you communicate with your members or the participants inside your study. And so all of those tools are accessed from admin web. And of course, we have a very close relationship with Genetic Alliance and the Genetic Alliance IRB, because most research studies in the United States and similarly outside of the United States need to be approved by the IRB or a similar ethics review board outside of the US in order to include people in the study. And so one thing that we did to make that easier for all of the people on the platform is we worked very closely with the Genetic Alliance IRB to actually get the entire platform itself approved by the IRB for research purposes. So we've taken a lot of the kind of base work off of the researcher, because the processes that are used inside the platform, all of the mechanisms and the kind of base level of data collection is all already covered by an approved IRB protocol. And so when you come in as a researcher to the platform and want to design your study, you build that basically on top of the platform. It's a much more streamlined process with the IRB and very simple to do on the platform. And then you just enable those protocols using the study designer tool and the consent manager in the platform. Then the third aspect is, of course, where the research is actually done. So as part of admin, you're defining what data the study is collecting. On the research side of the platform, you're actually accessing the data collected for a specific study. So we have a space, what we call workbenches, which is where the researchers will access this information. So the entire Luna platform is built within the AWS HIPAA compliant cloud infrastructure. And each workbench is a private, secure area within that infrastructure where you can access any of the data specific to your study. So there's a one-to-one relationship with your workbenches and your study where you can collect any of the information. Within that workbench, you also have the analysis tools that you need to do any of your research. And so these are the typical analysis tools that you would have wherever you're doing it. They're just here in your cloud infrastructure space. So the analysis tools include things like Tableau, Jupyter Notebooks, where you can do R, Python, and so forth. Also an integration with Hail for genotyping and genomic analysis. You can also import external data sets into your own workbench. So those proprietary data sets remain private to you, but you can use them in there to augment your analysis. So we've already talked through most of this, but I just wanted to, again, kind of highlight the continuum of how we think about from creating communities or kind of invigorating established communities, understanding their needs, going through the research process, and then supporting them afterwards. And I won't go into this in any detail. Today, we'll touch on several of these features in the demo portion, but you can see we try to support every step of the way from creating the communities or kind of reinvigorating established communities through the entire research process and beyond that. So we want it to be a continuous kind of learning opportunity for you, your members, and the researchers. As we've already said, we're GDPR compliant, HIPAA compliant, SOC 2 certified, and the platform is IRB approved. I mentioned that we're an international platform, so we have members from over 187 countries today. Many of the communities that are on the platform today operate internationally. How that kind of manifests in the platform, besides the privacy regulations that we support, is in some of the aspects predominantly focused around the survey builder tools, where we enable different types of translations. So right now, all the surveys can be translated into Latin-based languages, And of course, we're working to extend that to other alphabets, as well as to those languages that read right to left or top down. And then lastly, we also have communities across all spectrums of conditions and diseases. This is just a quick categorization based on ICD 911 codes. We also have a lot of communities on the platform that are more specific to a general area of interest, like women's health or skin health. We have some folks that are more interested in wellness aspects instead of actually a disease condition as well. So that's it for this piece. Next, we're going to go into some demos. Before we did that, I wanted to see if there were any questions.
Hi, Deb. We have a couple. Okay. One is, how many rare disease organizations are using the platform? Do you know that answer?
I don't know the number off the top of my head, but there's probably over 50% of the communities that are on the platform are rare conditions.
Okay, and we have also a question from Melissa. If you are a caregiver, can you easily toggle between two minors from a single account, or do you need to create separate accounts for each?
So there'll be one parent guardian account, and within that parent guardian account, you can create multiple minor profiles. So I'll just say I'm Deb, and if I had a daughter, Samantha and Jessica, I log into my accounts, and I'll show you this in just a second during the demo, and I'd have options to go into my own account, go into Samantha's account, or go into Jessica's account. And once I'm in the account, I can flip back between the accounts easily from inside there as well.
Okay, thank you. That's all we have for now.
Great, so I will go ahead and show you what I was just talking about. First, I'm going to actually take you into my account. I don't have a minor connected to my account right now, but so I'll show you that in just a second. But I wanted to give you a little bit of a walkthrough of what the member's account looks like. And some of our demo accounts are pretty light, so I figured showing my account would give you a lot more in-depth look at what's available. I had logged in here to my account previously, which is why you didn't see me having to enter an email address, password, or code for two-factor authentication. We have a video that goes through the onboarding process for standard accounts and for minor and ward accounts. So I'm happy to send that video if you haven't seen it as part of sharing these slides afterwards as well. Okay, so this is my account. You can see when I logged in, I landed on my dashboard. I can immediately see a few things about some of the data that I've shared. I can go to a message center, which is where any of the messages I get from the communities I've joined are. And front and center are the communities that I've joined. So you can see I've joined some of the more general communities. I could click into here to go to the community pages, and I'll show you that in a second. I can also see a list of all of the different studies that I've actually joined. And that's what this qualified means, is that I've actually enrolled and met any enrollment criteria to be in the study. But what I wanted to do real quick is show you kind of what this looks like. So say this is your community. I go into the skin health and wellness community. I can immediately see a description about the community. This is something that the community admin creates in the admin console. I can see how many members are in here, kind of what's going on with them in terms of the data they shared. I can immediately see a message center, which is specific messages that this community admin has sent to me. So you can see this was just a new study that the community was recruiting for, and some reminders to do some of the data for the study. And then here I can see any of the studies that this community is presenting. So in this particular case, the skin community did an initial exploratory study, and then Allergan is working with this community to recruit to a specific study that they have ongoing on the platform right now. So that's kind of like the control center right away, which tells you everything you need to know about what's going on with this community. This community didn't set up a logo, or you'd be able to see their logo here as well and that type of stuff. But all the content specifically here is basically pushed here by the community admin from the admin console. There's also a primary place for my data. So this is a page where I can see all the data that I've shared on the platform, irrespective of what study it was associated with. I can come in here and I can delete things if I don't want them to be here anymore. I can view them or download them if I want to get them back off the platform. You know, maybe I forgot to save my 23andMe file on my computer, so I need to download it again. I can see all of the portals that I'm connected to. I just have one, it's the Scripps one, which I think I have to update because it has 2FA now, so that's why it's spinning. But you can see all of the health records from my portal that have come over. These things are basically, in the United States, that FHIR structure that I mentioned that breaks down the data into resource types. These are the different resource types. So it's just how we show you what you've kind of shared. So you can see I have 13 procedures, 702 results, and so forth. And so that's just where you can come in to see everything, delete it, access it. There's also a place where you can see any studies that are available. So I can see all the ones that I've joined immediately. And then if there are any other studies that happen to be public that I'm not part of, I can come in here and see what they are too. And then last on your kind of typical menu, you can see how many unread messages you have and go immediately to the messaging center. You can look for settings. I'm just going to take you guys here so you can see some of the things, your name and so forth. You can set up some contact information. This is mostly all optional. I don't have any connected accounts, but this is where you would be able to add minors or add boards if you didn't do it as part of the onboarding process. Some privacy settings. So Luna only sends one monthly newsletter to our members, and you can opt out of it here if you want. Other than that, everything is through Recontact. The only way that you can receive a Recontact message is if you join a community, and the community admin can recontact you. If you join a study, then the study admin can recontact you. If you happen to change this toggle, if I turned it off, it would be gray. If I turn it on, it's blue. This allows Luna to contact you via Recontact, even if you haven't joined a particular community or study. This is defaulted to off. And then you can manage all of your consents. So there's a Luna consent when you come on the platform. Remember, I said that the whole platform is IRB approved. As part of that, you go through a broad consent that any data that you're sharing on the platform is for health research. Your data is being used in a de-identified manner, and your data does not leave the platform unless you consent for it to do so. So if your particular study requires personally identifiable information, or you need to export the data from the platform for whatever reason, that's just justified as part of your protocol to your IRB. And then there's an additional study-specific consent that I'll show you how that works on the admin side. But at this point, this is one place where you can go to see all of the consents that you've agreed to, whether it's study-specific or the Luna consent. You can download and print it. You can view the basic form. You can revoke it at any time. Luna manages all that for you. So whether it's the Luna consent or a study-specific consent, we track when it's been deployed, we track how it's been changed, we track when the member accepts it, if they revoke it, if they accept it, revoke it, and accept it again, we track all of that. We align their status so that we know at any moment if they've consented to be in a specific study, and if that data should be available in the workbench associated with that study or not. And of course, they can delete their account at any time as well. Okay, I'm gonna show you a demo account that has a minor account in it really quick so that you can see what that looks like. So this is inside of our demo environment, which is basically the same as our live environment, except sometimes in the demo environment, we're testing out new features. So there could be a little bit of a difference from that respect. So again, I had already logged into this account beforehand just to save us some time, which is why you didn't see the email address, password, and 2FA. But you can see when I first come in, I see two profiles. So Becky is me as the parent, the owner of the account, and then Sarah is my minor. I think I made her birthday in May of last year, which is why she's not a year old yet. So I can choose to go into either one of these to start and then switch accounts once I'm inside them. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Sarah, the minor's account. So you can see whenever you're in Sarah's account, there's always going to be this message at the top that you're acting on behalf of Sarah. And you can switch account by clicking here. That'll take you back to your profile page and you can switch back and forth. So when you're acting on behalf of Sarah, you're seeing communities that Sarah's in, you're seeing studies that Sarah's in, you're going to see data that Sarah has shared, and meaning you shared on her behalf. So we're just trying to give enough clues so that you remember that when you're answering a survey, it's not, when you're in Sarah's account, we don't care how old you are, we care how old Sarah is. So you need to answer the question as if you're talking to Sarah, as if you're answering for Sarah. And sometimes the surveys will say, how old is your child? And so you'll be like, okay, I remember I should be answering for Sarah. And other times it'll say, how old are you? And you'll have to remember, I'm in Sarah's account. I need to say, 11 months, not 32 or 33, whatever age you are. So again, very similar to what you saw before. This is just a little bit leaner because this is a demo account. So there's a community that she's in. There's some studies that she's joined. Same tools on the My Data side. The differences that I'll show you is you can come here to switch accounts. If you come into the settings, you'll see her information up here, but all of the contact information is blocked out because the only contact information that we collect for a minor is the parent's contact information. So we don't want you to, even if your child is 13 or 14 and has their own email address or whatever, we don't want it. So there's a process on the platform once your child hits their 13th birthday that you'll start to get emails that let you know that your child is of age in certain countries to allow her or him to actually take control of their own account. So depending on what country you and the child reside in, that appropriate age may be anywhere between 13 and 18. And so we've just enabled this to say, if you want to give control of the accounts to your child when they turn 13, make sure that that's appropriate for the jurisdiction that you live in. And B, then there's a process, an automated process that you go through with a couple of clicks of a button to give control of the account over to your child. And that would require them to then set up their own email address and password to take full control. At that time, they would also have to reconsent, basically. You consented on their behalf before, now they have to consent themselves in order for any of their data to continue being used on the platform. So I'm going to pause right there. That's most of what I wanted to show you on the member side. Actually, one more thing, and then I'll pause. The last thing is on the community hub, and I should have showed you this while I was in my account versus this one, but in our stage environment, we only have a couple of communities that are public, but in the production environment, the live environment, this is a pretty long list, and the community admin can choose to make their community public through the admin console, and then it would be displayed here. And it's just another way for members on the platform to find your community and decide to join it or not. So that's all in their choice. And again, it's your choice if you want to have your community public or not. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pause before I go over to the admin side and see if there are any other questions on the member side.
We have a couple of questions, Deb. One is, if a new study is created by an admin, which account receives the study invite?
That's defined by the study admin. So they'll use what's called a referral link to recruit members to the study. And I'll show you what that looks like in just a minute.
And we have one more. How often do patients enter their own natural history information on the platform directly versus needing someone else to enter the data supplied on a survey form?
I don't have that number. I would say we probably have quite a few communities around pediatric conditions. So I would say we probably have a pretty large number of parent accounts and parents who are completing information for their child. We do have a couple groups, I don't know how many off the top of my head, that are more adult conditions, so there's probably some wards. We also have a strong number of accounts that are just standard accounts where people are filling it out for themselves. So I think it's a pretty strong mix across the board, if that's what you meant by a caregiver versus the actual individual.
And one more, is this considered a push or pull system from the members' side? Do you
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you said. Everything is member initiated or member controlled. So the member has to decide to share data. The member has to decide to enroll in a study before that data is usable for research. The member has to decide to make a connection to their patient portal for their data to be ingested back into the platform.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to hop over to the admin console real quick. So I'm just going to take you into my account, which has a little bit more access to some of the features that you will see aren't accessible to all community admins, but I'll point those out. And there's only a couple Luna admin. You'll see the Luna admin tab in a second. I'm just going to go into Luna's area so you can see a lot of what's going on here. So immediately when you come in, there's a small Luna community on the platform. You can see the number of registered members and consented members. Each community has their own view of this. We're actually building out some additional metrics that you'll see very soon. The key features I wanted to go over today, though, are in the collect data area. So the study designer is predominantly where you'll go in to create a study. So for example, this was a study that we helped a group do around migraines and severe headaches. And this is, again, like you will have created a protocol that you will have submitted to the IRB. It will be exempted or approved before you can deploy it on the Luna platform. So you're basically at this point kind of copying and pasting some of the information from the protocol that you submitted into Luna so that you can deploy it to your members. So you'll just provide some descriptions. This is the description that gets displayed to the actual individual. If you put in a disclaimer, it's showed in red. I'll show you what one of those looks like. If you know, so for some of our communities, for example, that the affected individuals are only children, there's not a mixture of children and adults, they might allow only minors into the study. And again, that helps prevent an accidental enrollment by a parent when they shouldn't have gone into the study. A lot of the communities that are on the platform have a mixture of affected individuals who are children and adults. So they need to include all of these types. And I'm afraid I don't have time to go through this in a lot of detail, but there are different videos and how-to guides that you can have access to as an admin on the community to see all this. But you can monitor the study status. So it starts off in a draft, you can launch it, you can close it, you can archive it. You can, once you've launched it, you can open for enrollment, open for data collection. Say your study, you only want 500 people in it. You can close enrollment once you reach 500, but leave data collection open. You can make it visible or invisible. Basically, if it's a visible study, that means anybody in your community can see the study on your community page. Remember, we just looked at that, and they can try to join it from there. You might need to have it be invisible, which is what this one is right now, which is gray, because it has specific enrollment criteria. So you want to control who you invite, and I'll show you how to do that next. You can actually authorize other communities to access the study. So in this case, the migraine community is accessing it, and they've authorized the women's health community because they wanted this community's help recruiting to the study. This is where you store the IRB details. You can add study-specific consents. So there's no consent associated with this. There's a consent manager here for how you build out the consent. And again, that's a lot of copying and pasting because the consent would have been part of the protocol that you submitted to the IRB. You can create prerequisites for the study. This study doesn't have any prerequisites, so anyone can get in. Basically, you can gate the entire enrollment to the study by a prerequisite. One of the more common ones we have seen is, have you been diagnosed with XYZ condition? If you say yes, then you can enroll. If you say no, you can't enroll. You can also gate specific surveys or other data requests by a prerequisite. So say you have everyone coming in who's had migraines before, but you only want some people who have very sensitivity to light to complete another survey. So it's a sensitivity to light survey to go deeper into that. You'd have a prerequisite that on that one that says do you have, light sensitivity as part of your experience with migraines? If they say yes, they can access that survey. And then of course you can add the different data requests to your survey. So in this particular example, there's a validated instrument that hit 6, a trigger and pain kind of CDI going on in it, and then the validated demographics instrument on the platform. So let's hop over to refers, which is how you actually invite people. So once you have a launched study, it's available in the refers area for you to create a referral link to. So in the refers, I'll use this one as an example. It's the name of your community and then a name that you can make. So let me show you what that looks like real quick. So the name of your community is always right here, and then you can type in whatever you want over here. If you add a description, it's just an extra message that shows up on the registration page. You won't see any of this. You can again limit the refer to only allow certain account types to get in. So once you create your refer, in this case, think of the refers kind of when you do a marketing campaign, you want to put tags on there to kind of track how your people are coming in. So for a particular community recruitment effort or study recruitment effort, you might do things through a newsletter, an email campaign, a social media campaign. And so you might want to have different referral links for where the people came from. So I'd set up a referral link for the newsletter. I might set up a different referral link for anybody coming in off of Facebook or Twitter or whatever it is. Or you can just have one and not differentiate. It's completely up to you. But the important piece is that once you have your refer created, you do this little show snippet creator. If you want, so if you leave the study blank, it's just a recruitment link for your community, and they'll land on whatever default study you've set up as your default study, or they'll land on the Tell Us About Yourself study, which is the default study for the entire platform. And then the last thing here is that if you do want to recruit them for a study like the migraine study, you click the study here, and what that did, and I'll show you what it did, say none. This is the referral link to your community. So again, Luna DNA is the name of the community here. The newsletter is the specific refer. I select the study and it adds the name of the study. So you just copy and paste this link. You can create, text links inside of an email campaign or a social post. You can create buttons and links on your website. The important thing is that this entire link has to be intact. If it gets broken, best case scenario, it loses the study context and the person just goes into your community. Worst case scenario, it completely breaks and you get an invalid error message when they try to create their account. So we definitely recommend you hide this link behind like vanity text, like click here, and then behind that it's this link. We also provide a little bit of HTML code in case you need to create a button on your website. This is super basic HTML code. It's a very boring button. It's like a tiny little white button, but at least gives you the basics for how you include the link inside the HTML code in case you don't have a web developer on staff. So as soon as the member sees this link, say it's a button on your website, and maybe you're doing a registry on Luna and you say, click here to set up your registry account. They click there. It takes them through our onboarding process. Because they clicked this link, our system remembers this person came in from this community and they should go to this study. So after they create their account, instead of landing on their dashboard, they land on the study page and they go into that study and they can immediately see what you're trying to do with that study. And if they want, start sharing data for that study. I don't think I did this when we were on the member side, so I'll show it to you from this aspect, but you can actually, when you create your studies in Study Designer, there's a little preview here so you can see what it's going to look like to your members. And it basically takes them through the steps of, do they want to join? Are there any consents? Are there any prerequisites? And then what are the data requests? And they can see each of the data requests that are in the study to begin. Okay, I'm going to skip over Survey Builder because that could take forever, but I'll come back to it in just a second. Really quickly, I wanted to show you the Recontact Agent. So again, the Recontact Agent is the way that community and study admins talk to the people in their communities and studies while preserving the member's anonymity. So you don't have their name necessarily, you don't have their email address. What you do is you create audience filters based on kind of logical parameters. So for example, we've set up some of the most common audience filters that people have been using, like I want to contact everybody in my study. So I want to contact everybody that's in the migraine and severe headache study. So I select the study name, click the little plus button. It adds the filters down here for me. All I have to do is give the filter a name and a description so I remember what I was doing with this audience, and that audience is created. In some cases, you may have something that's more complex than one of these. And so you want to create a custom audience filter. And so you can just go through each of the different possible methods to set that up yourself. I'm not going to go into too much detail again here just because of time. And then on the messaging side, you can create a custom message. So you give it a little title, which if you remember from the member side messaging center, it's just a little kind of bolded title. So kind of short and sweet, like, hey, remember to do your surveys. And then you can write whatever message you want. You can add a link to it. So say I wanted to add a link to, again, that migraine study, you just click, you want to add a link to the study, the name of the study. And this is just telling you what the message link is going to be. How it will appear to the member is it'll just say go to link, and they click it and it takes them directly to the study page. And again, you give the message a name and you save it. Then when you're ready to do a notification, you'll just pick what you just created. I don't remember what these are. And then you can set like a date and time. You can set a recurrence. So one of the more common ones we have is people trying to remind the participants in the study to complete their data requests. So you can create an audience filter that's, I want to contact everyone enrolled in this study who have not completed the symptoms and treatment survey. And so you could do that as a recurring, like once a week for 3 weeks. And so in the first week, say you have 100 people that haven't completed that survey, the message will go out to them and it'll say, hey, please complete the survey, or whatever the message is that you wrote. Then on the second week, if you set it up to recur on the second week, the system looks again, and maybe of those 100 people, you still have 62 that are left that still haven't completed the survey. So then the message in the second week goes to those 62 people. And then in the third week, you still have 20 people that haven't completed the survey, and it'll go to those 20 people. So you can set up that kind of a nurture using the Recontact tool. And then lastly, the survey builder. So we have a lot of how-to guides and videos on the survey builder. It'll take a very long time to go through all of the different features in here, but I'll just give you a quick view. I'm actually going to go into Genetic Alliances view here. So as a Luna admin, I have a little bit of flexibility to view what's going on in the other groups, things in case there's an issue happening or you need my support to get through something, or one of the other support team. So I think right now I'm the only person that has this level of access, so don't be scared. But inside here, Genetic Alliance is working on a couple surveys. So I wanted to show you that when you land here, there's a tab for own surveys, and that's where your own custom surveys are that you're creating and working on. No one else has access to them unless you decide to give them access to these custom surveys. We also have what's called shared surveys. So this is where you'll find a lot of the validated instruments that are on the platform if you have access to them. So if you're familiar with validated instruments at all, some of them have licensing terms. So if you've let us know, so you would email admin support@lunadina.com and say, Quality Metrics has licensed me to have access to the SF36V2. You give us, proof of that, and then we would authorize you to have access to this survey, and it would show up in your shared surveys. There's also a lot of validated instruments like the demographics instrument that are available to everyone without license. And so you'll find those here as well. So you can use any shared survey. For the most part, you just use the survey intact. You can't edit it, but by having them be shared with you, you can add them to your study and collect data on those surveys. And then I'll just go in here real quick. So inside the survey, you can see that they've had a spy name, a short description. They didn't include a long description. You can include a footer. Here's where you could decide to share the survey with other groups if you wanted to. And then this is a short and sweet survey where they're asking to understand the conditions that people have. There's a preview feature that allows you to preview the entire survey just like the member would. It also gives you an estimated time to complete. You can invite anyone to preview the survey. They don't have to have an admin or member account on Luna to do so. You just enter their email. So as you're creating your custom surveys, you can get feedback on how it looks and so forth. And then of course, there's the library, which breaks everything down by questions and instruments so that you can find anything that you want to use inside here. And that's a place where you can go if you want to reuse publicly available questions so that you're not kind of re-asking how old are you in 20 different ways on the platform. You just find one that's already been created. If you like it, you use it. So I'm going to stop there. I know we're running really short on time and ask if there are any last questions.
Don't have anything in the chat, but feel free to unmute and ask. One just came in. Does shared data have to be used within your research environment, or can a researcher take it out?
So as I mentioned earlier, the consent on the Luna platform is that the data doesn't leave the platform without the member's consent. So if the researcher knows that for whatever reason, they're going to need to export the data outside of the platform and not use the research workbenches on the platform, they just need to include that as part of their protocol, and there'll be a study specific consent. So again, it's really all about just informing the member that they have to grant that permission, and then you can export it. So is that something that can be added later, was a question that just came in. Right now, you can't add a consent to a study after the fact, after it's been launched. There are ways to go back to the members and get additional permission. So yes, you can do it. It's just not as clean as if you know ahead of time that you need to do it. So what we've had to do in the past is collect email permissions from all the members for a certain piece of information to be exported, or basically you can add a new consent around a specific data request. So say you just need like some of the surveys, you can add a consent linked to just those surveys to get it exported. And that consent can be tracked and handled to the system. Any other questions, you guys? I know I went through that all really, really fast. So I know they're recording, so hopefully you can go back and look at whatever comes up, and feel free to email them and or me with any questions you have.
Well, thank you so much, Deb.
We will have this recording available, and as Deb mentioned, if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that come up later.
I just saw Caitlin's last question. If you need to change a question in your survey, I think the way that the IRB handles it, but if Georgia or maybe Vilma or Nisheen are on the phone, oh, Georgia's here. Okay, yeah. I think if the change to the question is really like grammatical or spelling or super simple, that there's no need to go back to the IRB. But if it's more material, you do need to go back to the IRB. Did I get that right, Georgia?
Yep, you got that right.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you again to everyone from Genetic Alliance for the opportunity to speak today. It was great sort of virtually meeting everybody.
Thank you, Deb, for your time and sharing everything.
Thank you. Thank you to everyone for participating.